Good morning, Kenya. Rise and shine to the morning momentum. Your daily dose of a comprehensive rundown of the top stories making the headlines. It is the 30th day of April 2025, and the program on air is the morning momentum. This is a daily compendium of local and international news, human interest stories, current affairs, and expert opinion. The hashtag is the morning momentum at Younib Media TV at Alphonce Albakwekwe. My name is Alphonce Ouma, and now let's take a look at the top stories making the headlines on the papers. We start with The Nation this morning. It's about the scandal. CS Mutua's Qatar police jobs fiasco. Now, a government-backed program for employment abroad has imploded in controversy. Last year, Labour Cabinet Secretary Alfred Mutua told a forum attended by President Ruto that Kenyans would secure jobs as police officers in Qatar. Job seekers have been paying 250,000 Kenya shillings. We'll catch up with that story on page 2 and page 3. So Kenyans desperate for jobs abroad are losing their cash to rogue recruitment agencies. These untouchable architects of the con games continue to rip off victims lured by false promises of a breakthrough in life. But it is grand betrayal when jobless Kenyans are now fleeced through a state-backed program. Now, also on page 4 and page 5 this morning, secrets of talks on 2027 opposition coalition against Ruto. Opposition figures looking to craft an alliance they hope will topple President Ruto in the next general election held a preliminary meeting to explore how to arrive at a joint flag bearer. But in the initial talks revealed that the road ahead is treacherous and competing interests are a threat to unity. That story is beefed up for you on page 4 and page 5. So among those leaders is the PLP leader Martha Karua, Stephen Kalonzo Musyoka, Fred Matiang'i, among others, and we'll be catching up with that story in a few. Also on page 23 this morning, Inside Job, how CCTV footage exposed bankers in a plot to kill a teacher. Roslida Akinyi was robbed and killed on April 17th, moments after withdrawing 285,000 shillings from a bank in Mumias. Detectives have narrowed the homicide probe to 4 people, including 2 bank employees. On page 6, on investigations, opposition leaders and activists demand for prompt arrest of killer officer at the expose. Leaders protest state inaction 1 year after security agents shot dead unarmed protesters during nationwide anti-tax demos. That story is beefed up for you on page 6. On page 10 this morning, Father from Hell, sisters reveal rape, forced abortions after years of abuse by the person who was supposed to protect them. All right, let's get up close and candid with The Nation on page 2. CS Mutua's Qatar police jobs fiasco. Now, poor treatment. Victims say that in Qatar, they were held in camps where their phones were confiscated as fresh tests were conducted. With the promise of well-paying employment, hopeful Kenyans paid a total of about 260,000 Kenya shillings each to recruitment agencies, but they were deported a few days after arriving in Gulf State. That story is beefed up for you on page 2. On page 3 this morning, tears as victims of state-run jobs scandal narrate ordeal. Senate's Labour Committee has summoned Labour CS Alfred Mutua to shed light. Disappointed applicants say they have not received any refunds from agencies months after making payments. You want to catch up with more of those insights on page 3 of the Daily Nation this morning. Let's move on and take a look at page 4. Politicians plan opposition coalition against Ruto, while Jubilee Party has been pushing for Dr. Matiang'i to be the presidential candidate. Other parties say candidate will be picked through consensus. Political leaders say opposition unity is the only way to defeat Ruto in the 2027 elections. Now, the efforts by the opposition to unite against President William Ruto got off to a rocky start yesterday. This is after Wiper Party leader Kalonzo Musyoka's camp protested the perceived imposition of an ally of former President Uhuru Kenyatta as the opposition flag bearer. The talks yesterday had Jubilee Party National Chairman Torome Saitoti, a former principal secretary in the Uhuru administration, instead of Jubilee Secretary General Jeremiah Kioni, who has been part of the consultations in the past meetings. Sources at the meeting confided that Mr. Musyoka's camp had raised concerns over Mr. Kioni's position that Mr. Kenyatta and the Jubilee Party have endorsed the presidential bid for Dr. Matiang'i, who attended his first public meeting with the opposition team yesterday at the Nairobi's Karen Blixen. You want to catch up with more of those insights on page 4 and page 5. On page 5, again, Gachagua to unveil new party on May 15th. The former DP has finally settled on May 15th as the day he will launch a new party to take on President William Ruto's United Democratic Alliance, UDA, in the upcoming by-elections. His allies have revealed. The registered political party will be revealed ahead of major political jamboree on May 29th when it will be formally launched. That story is on page 5. On page 6 this morning, Gen Z protests, arrest killer officers now, civil society demands. Government accused of walking back on promises to speed up investigations into abductions, killings. BBC report confirms finding by civil society groups on use of excessive force against the protesters. Now, opposition leaders and the civil society have piled pressure on the National Police Service and the Kenya Defence Forces to arrest the officers implicated in the shooting and killing of demonstrators during the anti-government protests in June last year. They also want the Independent Policing Oversight Authority, IPOA, and the ODPP to speed up investigations and prosecution of officers flagged for having used excessive force during the protests. On page 7 this morning, IPOA still probing killing of 60 protesters a year later as victims' identities revealed. This is all about the wheels of justice. Kenyan authorities put pressure on the broadcaster not to screen the documentary shortly after the National Assembly passed the controversial finance bill on June 25th last year. Hundreds of demonstrators stormed parliament in Nairobi after overpowering security officers. That story is beefed up for you on page 7. You have the names of the cases of injuries and victims' identity on page 60, and that is from IPOA. On page 8 this morning, NMG's Tanzania subsidiary Mwananchi picks new MD. This is all about the corporate experience, and you'll catch up with that on page 8. Let's take a look at page 10. Dad took turns with us. Sisters speak on abuse. For years, 4 sisters suffered sexual abuse at the hands of their own father, who also forced them to procure abortions after impregnating them multiple times. The sound from a movie plays loudly in the background as a father calls his daughter to join him. What should be an innocent family moment masks horrific reality. For years, this seemingly ordinary scene was the prelude to sexual abuse that 4 sisters endured at the hands of the man to protect them, their father. It began with movie nights. It ended with a late night confession that would finally break the silence when 17-year-old Winnie was sent home from school for social behavior misconduct, allegedly lesbianism. It seemed like typical teenage rebellion. She served her suspension and returned to school, swearing to change her behavior and cut ties with the alleged girlfriend. But on April 5th, during school holidays, Winnie's 14-year-old sister Pauline discovered she was still chatting with this girlfriend and reported her to their parents. Their father confronted Winnie in fury, and in that moment pushed the breaking point. Winnie decided to reveal the truth she had kept hidden for years. What followed was a revelation so shocking it defied comprehension. Since the age of 8, Winnie's father had been sexually abusing her. She had endured 2 abortions, both pregnancies the result of her father's abuse. You want to catch up with that story on page 10. So tragic. Let's move on and take a look at page 12. Attack in Mandera leaves 5 quarry employees dead. Van driver and quarry owner has been arrested. The security team wants to be informed why the driver of the vehicle went against the measures put in place from December 2014. In figures, here are the important dates and the numbers. 21 is the number of miners in the ill-fated van. 5 is the number of quarry workers killed in the attack by Al-Shabaab, and 2015 is when the new rules on transporting workers to quarries, or quarries rather, came into place. 20 is the date in December 2014 Al-Shabaab attacked a mine, killing 36 employees. On page 14 this morning, Angata Barikoi killings. Deputy County Chief, police bosses moved. Meeting begins only after copter is sent to look for Emurua Dikir MP Johanna Ngeno. Locals tell IG Kanja that the administrator is a bully and always refers to himself as Al-Shabaab. You'll catch up with more insights of that on page 14. Let's move on and take a look at page 16. Parents decry late issuance of constituency bursaries. Lawmakers reject Mr. Odinga's proposal to abolish the NG-CDF. MPs ask school heads not to send students home for not paying school fees. That story is beefed up for you on page 16. Let's shift gears and take a look at the expert opinion this morning. With captured institutions, citizens must fill the gap. A citizenry that understands its rights is far harder to silence. Knowledge of the Constitution must become common. That story is beefed up for you on page 18. Also on page 18, are we paying for democracy or a political circus? It does not matter how much we spend. If Kenyans do not trust the process, elections will always be a disputed high-stakes gamble. Those are sentiments by Thuku Mburu. Also on the DN2 motoring article this morning, four-wheeled solution to Kenya's transport problem. Now, quadricycles, particularly electric ones, are gaining popularity as a city-friendly transportation option. How about using them as low-cost taxis in Kenya? That story is beefed up for you on page 19, the DN2 motoring article. Now, let's move on and take a look at county news. We start with Kakamega County. CCTV footage exposes bank teller's plot to kill a teacher. Teacher unions threaten to mobilize their members to boycott 2 banks. Union leaders hold meetings with police and bank managers. All right. Now, police have intensified investigations into the robbing and killing of a teacher who had withdrawn money from a bank in Mumias. DCI detectives have narrowed the probe to 4 people, including 2 bank employees. Western Regional Criminal Investigations Officer Njeru Nthiga said detectives are pursuing other suspects in the killing of Rosalida Akinyi, even as preliminary investigations point to 2 tellers, a boda and a security guard. Akinyi, a resident of Budonga village in Nyaholo constituency, was robbed 285,000 and killed by people who trailed her after she withdrew the money from a bank on April 17th. Now, let's move on and take a look at more county news. More than 25,000 IDs uncollected in Mount Kenya. Now, more than 25,000 national identity cards have not been collected from Huduma centers in Mount Kenya. At least 13,000 IDs remain uncollected in Murang'a County, 6,000 of them being for new applicants. County Registrar of Persons official Juliet Mutitu said the remaining are replacements of lost or damaged cards. Also this morning, family exhumes pastor's body to protest secret burial. A family in Vindo, Taita Taveta County exhumed the body of a pastor to protest his burial without its involvement. Edward Maganga is said to have been buried by his wife, Pasisi Wasai, without the involvement of his mother and siblings. That story is beefed up for you on page 23. Let's shift gears and take a look at the international scene. Snap elections. Canada's Liberals beat Conservatives in a poll. Minority governments in Canada rarely last longer than 2.5 years. Anybody but Conservatives, Trump and Trudeau factors determined the results. Now, Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney's Liberals have retained power in the country's election but fall short of the majority government he had wanted to help him negotiate affairs with the US President Donald Trump. The Liberals were leading or elected in 167 electoral districts known as seats, followed by Conservatives with 145, with votes still being counted on Tuesday. You want to catch up with that story on page 24. Briefly, in Mogadishu, anti-extremism drive intensified. Somalia started a national campaign on Monday to intensify awareness of counter-extremism. The campaign, which was launched in Mogadishu, brought together community elders to discuss their role and responsibility in the fight against Al-Shabaab. The future of Somalia demands action, unity, and leadership. Your role is critical, not in words alone, but in mobilizing your communities to stand firm against those who threaten the stability and dignity of existence. Now we move to business news this morning. Kenya blames IMF and World Bank for textiles collapse. This is all about the liberalization. Second-hand clothes trade hit millers and cotton farmers. Trade Ministry says structural adjustment programs resulted in industry woes. The digits stand at 578 million shillings, which is the value of raw cotton in shillings that Kenya was exporting to various markets by 1929. Now, briefly, in the cybercrime, Nigeria seeks 4 Kenyans in crypto platform hacking. Nigeria's Economic and Financial Crimes Commission has launched a manhunt for 4 Kenyans suspected of involvement in an incident in which users lost money on cryptocurrency and forex trading platform Crypto Bridge Exchange. The Nigerian watchdog published a list of 8 wanted persons, including the Kenyans, in connection with the platform breach 2 weeks ago. That story is beefed up for you on page 26. Let's move on and take a look at sports news now. We start with athletics. Agnes Jebet, how I broke women only 10-kilometer record. The 24-year-old Kenyan runner clocked 29 minutes and 27 seconds on Saturday. She hopes her exploits puts her in good standing ahead of the 2025 World Athletics Championships. That story on page 33. On page 34 this morning, Paralympian Oscar Dennis plots historic triple for 2028 showpiece. Former Kenya Sevens rugby star made his debut at the 2024 Paralympics. He wants to become the first athlete to qualify for the Olympics and Paralympics in 3 different disciplines. Also on page 35 this morning, media attack. Uproar over police assault of Nation photojournalist. Chris Omolo was struck on the back of the head by a police officer. SJAK warns of a possible boycott of league matches if action is not taken on the officer. That story is beefed up for you on page 35. Let's take a look at the cover page now, and we take a look at finance. Austerity, Cabinet okays slashed 2025-2026 budget. It is the second time the estimates are revised downwards. Ministers say bill focuses on closing loopholes and enhancing efficiency. That story is on the cover page for you this morning. And as we conclude, city to evict defaulters, including tenant with arrears of 13 years. Now, the battle between City Hall and tenants of its old estate, earmarked for redevelopment, could turn ugly after the devolved government threatened rent defaulters with evictions. The plan by Governor Johnson Sakaja's administration to rebuild 13 estates without proper public participation in the consensus from tenants has triggered conflict. Documents seen by the nation show some tenants have not paid rent for 13 years despite repeated notices and eviction warnings. Now, with that story of evictions, we come to the tail end of the morning momentum, this 30th day of April 2025. Thank you so much for staying with us and for choosing to watch the best youth television network in East and Central Africa. The program on air has been the morning momentum, and all this has been made possible by the Chief Controller Peninah Wachera, and behind the lens this morning has been John Kariuki. My name is Alphonse Ouma. See you on Friday, same time, same place. Until then, do have a beautiful Wednesday ahead of you.